Hello. I see so many people in the comments already. That's so freaking badass. Um, I see Kami John's, Abby. I missed you. It's been forever. Miguel, I see your Abby. Whoopty Jenna, I knew you'd be here because you are the biggest East Palestine badass I know. Um, Jenna, I don't see vegan succubuses, Avi. If you can you please put the mutual aid link for our guest tonight in the comments? I would appreciate that. Anyway, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We have two super special guests tonight. I know we don't always have guests because there's so much news to go over. But tonight we are joined by two East Palestine activists who have set up a mutual aid effort to help people in East Palestine, Alex and Emily. So thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for making that post that you were looking for independent media to share your stories with, because I'm always all about that. So thank you. Can you guys just
Thank you.
introduce yourselves more deeply and just kind of share why you started this group? Emily, if you'd like to take it first.
Sure. So Jenna and I both kind of started the United for East Palestine, actually Facebook group, when everyone had just been evacuated. No one was sure how long they would be evacuated. Really, the details were very scarce. So we set up the Facebook page in wanting to collect donations, provide resources, anything that people may have needed that had to rush out of the house, or, like, we really didn't know what was going on. So we wanted to have a place that people could go to specifically for those needs. And obviously it's turned into so much more now. Alex came in probably about a couple weeks after having the Facebook group, maybe even sooner, and connected with us. And it just grew from there. The fact that Alex has such a great background in doing these kinds of things led us to, more research and getting the independent testing done, and all these just wonderful, educated, independent chemists and professors and doctors. It's just been a huge blessing, and we just want to continue to try to find answers, because nobody's really getting these answers. It was a huge FU almost to these people that got sent back home a few days later after being evacuated, still not really knowing what was going on. Trains were already going again. They covered the tracks up. Didn't, I mean, we can go into that later, but, that's just something that really pushes this fight to, I mean, these people are sick, and I've grown to know many of them, and it's just really terrible, awful. And I'm not too far out either. I mean, I could smell it the night that they did the controlled burn, that evening, and there's just no way that it's not affecting more than just this 1 mile radius, that they are claiming that that's the only amount of people that, I mean, it's expanded a little bit now, I guess, if you really push for it, but those are the people that were only able to be evacuated. And that's after some time of really fighting to need to be evacuated. We really are pushing for that to expand and get the help they need.
Absolutely. Alex, how about yourself?
Yeah. What was the question?
Just
Sorry,
kind
I
of
know I
share a
went
little bit
all
of
over the
why you
place.
got into this. What made you passionate about East Palestine? Because we were discussing a minute ago that you're not in the area. Neither am I. I'm in Pennsylvania, but still, like, if you're an empath, hopefully you're concerned. But what kind of drew you to this and made you want to jump in and help?
Well, I have been interested in trying to organize here in Las Vegas a better transit system, including a functional rail system in Las Vegas and in Nevada. And I've been really focused on that over the last year or so. I'm a solidarity member with Railroad Workers United, and so I get their newsletters. So when this happened, it popped up in my email. I reached out to the Railroad Workers United, and then was like, hey, maybe let's get the word out about this. And then I wound up in the Facebook group, just seeing if I could help with trying to organize maybe mutual aid networks to get resources in and people out. And from there, we kind of just wound up teaming up, and we teamed up with people like the Purdue team, led by Professor Welton. Aaron Bragg is now a part of our board. He's amazing. He's had a interview with Status Quo. Um, and we Devin Oship and her team for mapping. So we've had amazing people reach out, and our goal has just been to sort of maximize. There's all this potential, resources and energy for getting real power behind the pushback on this, and so our goal has just been trying to convert that potential into actual momentum, and really not just trying to make sure the people in in and around East Palestine, Ohio, because people in Pennsylvania, right, who are also in like the very close impact zone, and people in Canada who are suffering from the same sorts of toxic chemical exposure symptoms because the chemicals are coming down there and around upstate New York. So it's about trying to formalize the actual how to keep people whole, how to keep people from getting as sick as they possibly can from all these toxic chemicals, trying to get people evacuated. So dealing with the immediate and short and long term impacts of this particular event, but also how do we, what steps need to be taken to keep this from happening again and again and again and again, like it is already showing that it has. At what point do we say, okay, let's actually do something about the fundamental problem here?
Right.
And I'm gonna I don't want this to sound like a conspiracy theory, but I do like to ask my guests about this who are involved in the East Palestine activism. What are your thoughts as far as how the Pittsburgh rail workers were going to strike and all of those things, and then so shortly after all the shit went down and it just started happening, now it's happened how many states? Do you think that's just a coincidence, or do you think they were trying to warn us of how many corners were being cut? Or what are your thoughts on that?
I missed the question. Everything kind of went black for a second.
Oh, so the fact that the first big explosion was East Palestine, and it happened so quickly after the people in Pittsburgh, the rail strikers, they were going on strike, and then basically they were satiated by a shit deal, and then East Palestine happened. So I'm wondering if you guys think that they were kind of trying to warn us just how bad it was, or if you think there's any kind of correlation. Emily, if you'd like to go first.
I've just being involved so deeply with even just our Facebook group, and even looking through Twitter and stuff like that, any social media really, you see all different perspectives, and it really does make you think. It really does. I think personally that this has been something that has been going on for a long time. If you look at the derailments in the past years prior, I mean, there's thousands or over 1,000 of them a year, about, I believe, and I don't have the exact number off the top of my head. I think people are paying more attention to it now with what has happened, but the thing is, this could happen in anyone's backyard that has these trains going through these towns. You don't ever think about it really, or maybe you have seen a derailment on the news in the past and just kind of, just it's there and gone. But with something like this that has impacted so many people, and we don't even know really how many people at this point, but for the people in the surrounding area, it just, it makes me like sick to my stomach and sad. But I'm losing my train of thought. But I do believe that there's more to it. I think everybody is really tied together. If you look at who Norfolk Southern works with, I mean, I could go deep into that even, but
Sure.
yeah, I
Go
mean,
for it. We've talked about it before, but
yeah,
I mean, the one gentleman I interviewed, he said, the average, the median income in East Palestine is $44,000, and the president of Norfolk Southern's annual income is 44 million. So that's,
right. That's the other
what we're
thing.
up against.
What they're providing is nowhere near enough. I saw somebody put
Right.
it as if they were taking it was like equivalent to $5 for them, for the amount of money that they're providing to people. Not to mention, they need to be covering healthcare costs on
Yes.
top of all of this for years to come, even. I mean, this isn't just, you get sick now and you can get better all of a sudden. I mean, this is a cancer causing chemical. The dioxin is it's terrible. And a lot of people don't have the means to leave. And it's not just in East Palestine, it's Negley and the surrounding communities that, they weren't even getting the help, and some of them still aren't getting this help. And that's why we want to provide these independent tests to actually show the levels and the numbers that our EPA is not providing. I went a little off subject with that. I have something
that's
I
totally
wanted to
okay.
bring up and kind of discuss and see also if, it's something your community would like to talk about in the comments as well too. But just to go off topic a little bit, we can come back to it too, because I'm sure Alex has a lot to say about this as well. But they are planning on, holding an Easter egg hunt for the village, the East Palestine Park Board. And it's turned into this big thing. I know they want some type of normalcy for the community, and I understand that, but they need to be holding it somewhere else. Dr. Welton, who Alex has brought up that, is doing the independent testing from Purdue, he actually even spoke on it today and highly recommends the officials to not be holding an Easter egg hunt right next to the park where they're still aerating, this creek and the streams and everything. I mean, it's still being blown up into the air. It's almost like it just really doesn't make any sense to be doing something like that, even after, they're going to redo the mulch and clean everything. I don't know how they're cleaning. They also what are they cleaning it with? They can't really be trusted in that aspect. These homes weren't even cleaned the right way. It wasn't treated as a hazmat situation. And people just,
that still doesn't help
it's
the air,
exactly. That's my point. That it's still aerating everywhere. So changing that's not going to do anything if it's just going to get contaminated all over again.
Holy shit, that's insane.
Yeah.
Alex, what are your thoughts on that?
So, in regards to the question of a connection between striking railroad workers and the event in East Palestine, I'm not going to speculate as to a direct sort of conspiratorial in terms of this was like a yeah, well, we'll show them type of thing. But it's certainly a stochastic link to it. It's inevitable when you deregulate, when you lay people off, when you act with um, the sole mind and goal of concentrating the most amount of economic power and profits into the hands of the smallest group of people possible, with that including making sure there are as few workers as possible, making sure regulations are as deregulated as possible, and making sure that regulations are as weak as possible, well, then yeah, things like this become inevitable. East Palestine was the big story this year, but since then there have already been like a dozen train derailments, many of which had toxic spills. We just had one in South Dakota.
Mhm.
2 days ago, I saw that a chocolate factory blew up right next to a rail factory. It literally exploded.
Yeah, that's right by me
Yeah,
in
this
Pennsylvania.
is
Mm.
not something that is in the least bit like it's connected in the sense that it was entirely predictable. The rail companies have been predicting it. The rail unions have been predicting it. Railroad Workers United have been predicting it. Anybody with knowledge of how rail systems works and how labor is being crushed by the rail companies to reap the maximum profits has been predicting things like this. In terms of derailments have been happening or continuing to happen. Just literally, 2-3 weeks after the East Palestine derailment, like 20 miles away, there was another gigantic
Yeah.
derailment. But this time the train wasn't filled with anything toxic, but it was just another gigantic derailment that was filmed right after that. So these derailments happen. But what made this particular event specifically egregious wasn't the derailment itself. It was the following explosion of millions, hundreds of millions, or tens of millions, or I'm sorry, tens of thousands of millions of pounds of toxic chemicals. Literally
Mhm.
90 million tons of toxic vinyl chloride was burned in this in the burn, and also several 100,000 tons of frozen vegetables and other things that had no reason to be burned, and that was because they once they got the okay to burn to do the typical burn of the one car full of vinyl chloride, they then decided to set literally everything on fire, and there's no safety reason why they would do that, and there's a lot of evidence that there was no safety reason why they would set even one car on fire, but there's a clear, I think, pretty clear profit motive in regards to how insurance works and how they get more money for destroyed materials than they would get if they just had to throw it away or reuse it.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Andrew,
Yeah,
sorry, I'm
no,
taking
you're
up all
fine.
the.
You're fine. So going off a little bit of that, and this is to both, Alex and Emily, but Alex, I did see a lot of what you being on JB's show a couple days ago. And one thing you said that really stood out that I didn't know about actually previously is that the train, one of the carts started being on fire 40 miles away from where it got derailed.
Mhm.
And that is wild for so many different reasons, but I think the number one thing that came to my mind is what does the 40 miles look like before it reaches East Palestine, and was it possible that some people, civilians, saw this train on fire as it was passing by and even called 911 emergency for help, and like there was no response to that, right? Because I don't know. I mean, again, it's possible the train, and maybe you couldn't fill me in on this, it's possible the train passed through a very rural area where there was hardly anybody there to see it, but 40 miles is a lot that yeah, fill me in on that, because I'm curious if you know a little bit more of the context of all that.
So I will say, and thanks for the question, Andrew. So that's a good question. And so here's the official story is that the train was on fire for a while because the meters that they used to detect are spaced out in such intervals that they just missed it when the wheel axle or whatever it's called actually set on fire, and then so for 40 miles they just didn't notice. I find that to be incredibly unlikely for the reasons that you just listed. It's a train on fire for 40 miles.
That kind of stands out. Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to put that into perspective in terms of like how much space 40 miles is. So to put that into perspective, I'm gonna quickly Google how many miles across the United States is. Okay, so how many miles across is the U.S.? The United States is 3,000 miles. So that's 1/10 of the entire length of the continental United States that it traveled. No, sorry, not 1/10, 1%. So yeah, 3,000. So 1% of the entire continental United States was traveled between when it was set on fire. That's a huge amount of area. There's no way all of that was farmland. This is Ohio. There's plenty of farmland, but this is Ohio. It's a very densely populated part of the United States. There are so many small towns just like East Palestine for them to that what they would hit along that way, or that they would see. There would be all kinds of villages that could see them. I don't know if anyone called 911, but more importantly, um, if they didn't notice, if they really truly didn't notice, that is the most damning thing, because that means that every one of their safety measures is totally and completely not enough. I'm not sure the word I'm looking for is failing me, but it's definitely not sufficient for what needs to be done to keep these rails safe.
And even if nobody saw it, you cannot convince me nobody smelled that. I mean, people were still smelling it like miles and miles away, like weeks after it happened.
Yeah,
So
it was raining after too, and everything you could smell. I mean, it didn't smell normal. And I believe it was about 20 miles out that it was caught on a Ring camera. There is footage of that, which I think they were also saying we're trying to get rid of. But what I have a hard time understanding is when, according to, actually, I was listening to a podcast with a Norfolk Southern actual conductor who previously worked with Norfolk Southern, and he mentioned normally more than every 3 miles at most there's some type of signal being sent when an emergency like that happens, such as the temperature getting to a certain extent or whatever. But then I also heard somebody else saying in a different interview that it's sent to the what is it called, Alex? The information desk who relays that because the conductors supposedly don't know any of this stuff is happening unless that information is given to them. So supposedly for all this time, they had missed at least 3 different possible times they could have alerted the conductor, what was going on. And it's just the safety regulations are just mind-blowing that this could happen so often. Honestly, it's surprising that something like this hasn't happened before with how much it occurs, and it needs to change because look at what it's causing. And there's people that really truly think that they are safe because we have the government officials telling them that it is. And, they're going to try and believe the experts. Not all people obviously feel that way, but there are people that do believe, in those kinds of things and say, well, they say it's safe, so I think it's safe, but they still have no numbers or proof of it being safe. So how can you even, it's just mind-blowing to me that there's still no test with results showing any type of numbers of any of the chemicals in the soil, in the air. The EPA isn't even testing for the correct chemicals. And that's another reason why it's good that these independent tests are being done. I mean, it's just not okay. It's really not. And things need to change immediately.
Well, even when they were saying everything was fine, there was a mother who was interviewed on Status Quo. Shout out Status Quo. You're like the only other independent media channel who's been covering this. So a mother was saying, I took my son to the emergency room and they said he had to take a decontamination bath before they'd see him. Well, you guys are the ones who are saying everything's fine. So what the hell is a decontamination bath? And why the hell does he need to take one when he needs to be in the hospital? So
Yeah,
have you talked to anyone with stories like that?
so many people, so many, and
Mhm.
so it's to the point where the question isn't so much about are they lying. They're lying. We know they're lying. They've been caught
Absolutely.
in multiple lies. We have
Mhm.
we have tests proving that there are dioxins. We know there are people. We have data showing that people have been experiencing vast amount of toxic chemical exposure injuries. The question isn't are they lying? We know that. The question is how do we address these lies?
Mhm.
Because these people are being exposed to toxic chemicals. We don't know what the full cocktail of toxic chemicals they're being exposed to actually is, but we know that none of them are good, and we need to do not just testing to find out what those chemicals are that they were exposed to, but also to find out what the short and long term health impacts of those exposures are going to be. So, how do we use our available organizational structure and build from the potential amount of people who are potentially interested in working with us to form a cohesive response to this, to actually have the sort of accountability we need to have in order to
Mhm.
function as a society.
Absolutely. So what, that's one of the issues that I find as an activist and an organizer. How do you keep people interested? Because now East Palestine isn't that shiny object as it was when it first happened. So do you find it's difficult to still, convince people pay attention to this?
Emily, go ahead.
Um, I would say, as far as when you look at, the not, I'm very grateful for all of the independent media because I feel like these are people that actually care too, and do have empathy towards other humans and what's really going on, and are able to really look at the bigger picture here as well. As far as like bigger news media outlets, I mean, our Youngstown, you know, news outlet is somewhat, covering certain things because they're local, but you do see that's why we want to keep posting, keep sharing, keep talking, and do as many interviews and anything else that we can do to bring light, provide light. Like, I even when I post something on my own, Facebook or wherever, I mean, I have a smaller Twitter account, so, but as far as like Facebook goes or my Instagram or whatever, my reach has been so low that I really do feel like there is a censorship there,
Mm-hmm.
especially when we're have say certain words such as Alex had mentioned before. That, and it made a lot of sense that when I bring up Dr. Welton, which is often when I share something, uh, my reach, I could see it, especially on my Instagram. It's a business page, even on our Facebook group with certain things that people post, you can tell the difference between the reach of looking at those statistics. And so it's like, what do you do in that sense when you are being censored to an extent?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If I could just
But
I mean, I have 25,000 followers, and sometimes I look at my posts that say mutual aid and it's like 5 likes. No, something's up. Don't give me that shit. So, yeah, you're right. They do. And on my channel as well. That's why I post on Rockfin as well, because Rockfin doesn't censor.
yeah.
Alex, what's your response to how you keep people interested?
I don't see. I great question, and I think the issue is less how we keep people interested and more how do we maximize the level of interest that already exists in order
Yes.
to organize a cohesive response.
Yes.
People are still interested in this. People have been interested into this. The corporate media wasn't going to report on this at all, until it went so
Mhm.
viral that they had no choice, and
Right.
then the coverage
Yeah.
was
It took like a few days for them to say
it took
anything.
weeks for them
Maybe
to
Took
say.
a few weeks.
It's
Yeah.
yeah, that's probably yeah.
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 So, and they weren't planning on it. And then when they did, they came in for a week. It was some coverage. Well, it was, not super out, not too much coverage, not as much coverage as they would give if, I don't know, Kim Kardashian had another baby, but it was a
Yeah.
significant amount.
Priorities.
Surely.
It was a significant amount of coverage compared to what they were planning on. But then after that, it was away, and there was never any real accountability because that wasn't the point of what they were doing. The only way we get real accountability is we need to collectivize and come together. Every organization, regardless of where any individual organization or person stands in terms of personal, economic, or political philosophy, if you agree with the fundamental tenets that human beings and the people who live with you, your children, your family, your neighbors, your brothers, your mothers, your daughters, your everybody who you know should have access to clean water, um, soil that isn't poisoned, and air that they can breathe without giving exposing them to toxic chemicals. If you agree to those three things, then we can agree that something needs to be done. That the current, and this isn't about opinion. This is just pure, objectively measurable fact. The status quo is fundamentally not acceptable. If we can all agree that those three things are necessities, then we can agree that the current trajectory of our society is not acceptable. And if we can agree on that, then we can come together and formulate a plan of what to do to make it so that these things don't just it's so that these things like this stop happening, because we have the capacity to do so. Railroads are just fundamentally, inherently, the safest, most efficient form of mass transit that humans have invented, at least since the Industrial Revolution. There is no better way, no safer way, no cleaner way, no more energetically efficient way to transport people and product from one place to another that exists in our society than railroads. We have the capacity to make railroads completely safe. We have the capacity to limit the number of derailments to zero, because every single derailment that has ever happened has always been due to negligence. We have the capacity to fix those issues, and we can reach out, we can build a coalition with railroad worker unions, organizations interested in protecting the environment, organizations interested in holding the government and corporations accountable. All of these are organizations that we can work with and form a coalition with to fix the fundamental systemic issues that are causing these problems.
Absolutely. Andrew, I believe I don't think it was a show I did by myself. I think it was one I did with you. And we were discussing how we showed an article about a gentleman who said that they had 60 seconds to do their assessment of if the train was able to be used, essentially. Wasn't that you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure if that was, but
Maybe
yeah,
it wasn't. It could have been Andy.
yeah,
But
might have
yeah,
been the
essentially,
Yeah, as they went down and changed the time from like 3 minutes to
Yeah.
60 seconds. Yeah, I know exactly what you're
Yeah.
talking about. That was a railroad worker. It's cutting that. It's another way to cut down costs and getting those trains moving. It makes you just, there's so much that could be done.
Yes.
I mean, it's 2023. Like, we have all of the resources to make it safe. We can't just say, oh, forget the trains, let's get rid of them. They transport so many of our goods throughout the country. That's just not
And
feasible.
my
But
blind ass uses them to travel, okay? Because I can't drive.
yeah,
So I need
absolutely.
trains.
And same transportation too. Exactly. No, there's a lot that goes into that. That's why it's important. And like Alex said, another one of our goals is really, finding these other organizations and stuff, not just, even for the train, but as a whole for the environment, you know, we already have so much going on that
Mhm.
we should be worried about, and to adding more and more to it, it's something that we could at least try and decrease what is already, you know, destroying our environment if it's, you know, if we're able to.
So it's pretty obvious, right, that people like, Buttigieg, right? Pete Buttigieg, completely negligent over this situation. Biden, very negligent. DeWine, extremely negligent as well, has contradicted his statements many times about very, oh, you should evacuate. No, it's fine. No, it's this. I
Right.
don't really hear too much about local politicians and what they're doing there, if they are doing anything, right? So I'm just curious if you know, in terms of what measures have they been putting forward, or lack of measures and such, and are are residents at all, are they speaking with residents and being held accountable as well?
I personally, I know a few people who have reached out to certain people. I should have been more prepared with my facts. I get very like fired up and emotional about these kinds of things, and the facts kind of go out the window when I'm in a situation like this. So I apologize.
I'm the same
But I
way.
know
It's all
that,
good.
you know, there's people posting, call this person, call that person. I'll share any post like that. It is important for us to reach out to those people, especially since our own governor is not taking the right steps that need to be taken since this whole thing has pretty much started. There's a lot of negligence when it comes to that part. It's easy to blame. People want to blame the presidents and the former presidents and this and that, but our own governor is not doing the things that he could be doing to help either. When it comes down to it, it is, I believe, the railroad's fault, Norfolk Southern's fault, but it's all tied in together. They all work together to figure out these solutions, and there's just too much negligence when it comes to that. But there are local, I mean, maybe we could post ours to people writing or phone calls, but as far as the response goes, I'm assuming there hasn't been the best response, because I personally have not seen it. I'm not saying I'm the end all for that, but
Sure.
I would definitely consider you an expert on that, Emily. You're definitely
Well,
way more tuned into what's going on than most people.
in that aspect, yeah. So I mean, I guess to an extent, yeah. Then there is also negligence when it comes to that. That's why we do need to continue to reach out to them. Go ahead.
One thing I'll say. So there's a question of how much of it is negligence, how much of it is incompetence, and how much of it is just purely systemic.
Yeah, those are great words to use too. I just immediately thought of the negligence, but you're right.
Totally. So Pete Buttigieg is so thoroughly unqualified for the position of transportation secretary. It's difficult for like a person who isn't aware of how much goes into that to really fathom just how completely unqualified he is for that position. The amount of knowledge that should be held and career expertise that should be held by somebody who oversees all the transportation in the United States, the largest economy in the entire world, being given to somebody with zero experience in the field is terrifying. I was going to say baffling, but then I was like, no, because we've seen this before. Then I was going to say infuriating, but the more I thought about it, the more it's actually just terrifying, because this isn't a one-off thing. This is how the business of our society has become to be done. This is how we do business in our society at the current state. There is zero question of competency, of ability to solve problems at the highest levels. At the highest levels, it is simply a gotcha board game of people changing and exchanging political favors and money in exchange for political favors and money. It is a rotating, infinite black hole of criminality that is so deep and so pervasive that it's literally impossible. I'm not going to say literally. It's almost impossible to even grasp the basic scope of it. Never mind see the finite details that happen mostly in back rooms and behind closed doors. But what we know is that none of the people who are supposed to be addressing this at the governmental level, whether it's the EPA, the Ohio governor, the federal government, any of the oversight committee boards that should be taking care of this are doing this. And I think to an extent, I mean, corruption, there's an extent, corruption obviously plays a gigantic role, but there is an extent to which just the fundamental way that our government functions is so obsolete. Our government still functions the same way it was designed to function literally 250 years ago. Yeah, 250 years ago. That is two industrial revolutions ago. That is the steam era and the petrol era, industrial revolution, and the cyber era. That's three industrial revolutions ago of complete changes of how we function in society, and our government still basically functions exactly the same. So there's no real wonder that our government has become, I mean, corruption is a thing in itself, but it's become so inefficient and so just fundamentally incapable of solving the real issues because it just wasn't designed to. And I have no idea how. I mean, there's ways you could address that, but we can't work. If we focus on waiting for a federal government, a government system, a statewide government that was just never formed to be able to address the issues in the sort of speedy way and at the level that they need to be addressed for the size of our current society and the complexity of our transportation system, the only way we're going to be able to address that is to come together and figure out what needs to happen collectively and form the cohesive unit that we need to address this at all levels to really fix the fundamental issues of our society.
If I ever get to Vegas, I am going to give you the biggest hug because you are so fucking right. You are so right. Yes, absolutely. And I couldn't help, Andrew, I tried so hard not to say this, but when you say Buttigieg, all I think about is like high hopes, and like those dorky ass kids dancing, thinking they were making a difference. And then you see this, and it's so terrifying. Andrew, do you have any other questions?
So I guess, I guess my final question would be, where are you in the process of, setting up more independent tests and such, and what needs to be done, as well in order, to have that happen? And anything else, I guess, that we didn't ask, you that is worth mentioning?
Oh.
Go ahead, Emily.
I feel like Alex might be better about responding with that. As far as testing goes, the details, at least for that, I feel like you'll probably be better.
Yeah, well, I'll just say that Professor Welton and his team at Purdue University have been doing amazing work. They're genuine heroes. When people talk about people being heroes and serving the community, that if you want to thank someone for their service, thank Professor Welton, thank his team. They are doing genuine service for the community, for our society, getting answers that need to be and pushing and asking questions that need to be asked. So shout out to Professor Welton, shout out to Purdue University, shout out to his team. Dr. Galam from University of California, San Diego, and her team, Galam Research Institute, have reached out. They they're trying to get the funding that they need to get the blood work done. We've been trying to fundraise. We raised $3,000, which so much gratitude to everybody who has contributed. We are a bit shy of our $50,000 goal for the first month. Not sure how feasible that is at this point. The only way that I could see that happening is if somebody with a big name were willing to put their name behind it. And, fingers crossing, maybe that'll happen. But I think that we're going to have to move forward with the assumption that what happens if with the assumption that getting that funding might take some time. So now we need to figure out a way to move forward. How can the people who are invested in actually addressing this issue come together? How can we work together? How can we build the sort of intersectional, cross-organizational cohesion and cooperation is necessary to continue moving this forward, regardless of what else is going on? And to that end, really invite anybody who has any interest, anybody who has any voice, anybody who has any expertise, please reach out to us. We are doing some stuff behind the scenes, not quite ready to make the announcements on that, but we've got some big stuff in the works. And I just hope that we can continue to put the word out. I'm super grateful to all of the independent media people such as yourselves and everyone else who has invited us on and who's allowed us on to come speak. And I hope that we can continue keeping this at the forefront of at least a certain segment of the population's minds.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. One thing I do definitely want to talk to you guys about before we go is healthcare. I'm wondering if people who you're interacting with know about 1881A. Are you familiar with that?
Mm-mm.
So essentially, there's a place in the United States called Libby, Montana. And several years back, they found that there was asbestos in the air. And legislation was enacted to give them all 100% covered immediate health care. Now, that being said, it is still in effect, even though that threat is no longer an issue. So because of that precedent, 1881A could literally be used immediately to give every single person in East Palestine and surrounding areas 100% coverage. So it's daunting that it's not happening, but also that so many people don't know about it. So definitely we ask that anyone you talk to, please tell them. Alex, I can also, since we're DMing, I can also send you some info on it. But yeah, that's something Biden could have done it in the pandemic as well. For the past 3 years, it could have been used because it's an environmental health safety hazard. So this is something that, as a healthcare activist and an organizer, I'm always talking about how in these situations, just like Emily, you said at the beginning, you cannot plan for this. You do not just automatically have funds to be like, oh, I don't have insurance or my insurance sucks, but all of a sudden I need to go have these tests done or, potentially pay for it in the future with my health. And we're seeing so many people with these, ramifications for just living in certain areas. So have you guys spoken with residents who have had, the concerns? I feel like I need to go to the doctor, but I can't.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's a lot more of that kind of talk in our Facebook group and stuff like that. So what you are speaking of, it would like more details on that as well. I think that would be a really great thing to share with the community, because that's one of my big things as well too, is they need healthcare for years to come. Some people aren't showing every symptoms, and every person's different when it comes to these kinds of things and having reactions, just like pretty much anything you can have a reaction to. Just this is a bad one because it's chemicals that are, you don't know we do know the lasting effects, but as far as the people that aren't, necessarily showing symptoms now, there's even right away people with chemical pneumonia and chemical, bronchitis. These doctors don't even know what to test for half the time. It's just like it is really heartbreaking, and there needs to be more guidance there. And that's why we do try to provide that, and speaking with experts in those areas. And because I don't have the answers myself necessarily, I'm really learning a lot as I go, and just want to do my best to share with these people the knowledge that I'm gaining along the way to help, because my heart is just all in it now. And
Absolutely.
but I think it would be great to have more information on that.
I will absolutely send it to you guys tonight. So as far as the mutual aid money you are raising, what specifically does that go to? I know you were talking about more testing. Does it go towards helping people on the ground, or what are some of the things it's being used for?
So far, we've used very little of it. We used $100 of it to get an EIN so that we could get a card so that we could use any money, so we could have a specific account for it. We used $12 to get a website, which is still trying to get it good to launch, but we have a website now. Well, other than that, we haven't really spent much money. We still have most of it so far, but what we'll use it for depends entirely on how much we're able to raise. Like if we're able to raise the amount of money, like if we were able to meet our goal of $100,000, what we would use it for is to pay for all of the testing. We would reach out to Professor Welton and find out, hey, what do you need to get all the tests that you need to be done in the area, and then we would use that money we have a link that's actually in that in on the campaign page that breaks down over the full budget breakdown of how every dollar is spent. So we'll update on there, but we would use it for all of that. We would make sure we post. It would be publicly available what we spend it on, but it would go to everything needed to get that mission done. Then we would also use it for Dr. Galam. Ask Dr. Galam, what do you need to get people's blood samples, in terms of blood samples, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? What do you need? We'd be part of the whole process for both Dr. Galam, Professor Welton, in terms of what they're doing, and in terms of making sure they have the funding they need to keep it happen. We would try and do it as efficiently as possible. We're trying to keep costs as low as possible. And we would also put money into getting testing from samples that we know people are in Ontario, Canada. We have people who are keeping samples of the snow that's going to have the same chemical sheen and give people the same toxic. So get those samples sent to the right lab so we can get those tested, so we can find out just how far the scope of this is. It's Ontario, Canada, Kentucky, New York, get the sampling to find out just how far this reaches, what chemicals were released, so that we can create a full model of how the toxic chemical dispersion, where it went, and where it's going. And then we would also use it to get scientists based, whether it's like really good meteorologists who can write the right projections to find out exactly where this plume would have went, ecologists to find out what the long-term ramifications to our forests and our rivers and our creeks and our lakes will be because of this toxic chemical contamination, and create a full spectrum picture of exactly what we're facing here. And then any other money we manage to raise, if we manage to raise more money on top of that to continue going, we would then use that money to address those problems.
Yeah, and I just want to add really quick too, in doing so, and I know I did mention prior to, but in order to if we do get those test results and to help contribute to that will lead the facts right in their faces, what the EPA is not testing and everything else, to get these people the help that they need and covered by our government or whoever it may be. That's the most important thing in my eyes too, and the environmental effects that this could be causing. I mean, it's not just in this tiny little area, you know what I mean, or this 1 mile radius that they're saying. It doesn't just have a stopping point, and it's still, being pushed out into our environment and to the air people are breathing and everything else. So yeah, I just wanted to add that in really quick. If we could raise money and give hundreds of thousands of dollars to each person, we would, but we just know that that is not going to happen. And that it would be just, we know there's plenty of other people doing that too, but with the testing, that could lead to them having government funding or whatever it may be to bring that change, for getting them the right help that is deserved.
100%. The only way we're ever going to get the government to shell out the only way we're ever going to get the government to shell out the type of money that needs to be shelled out is by proving there's a problem. And the only way we're going to prove there's a problem is with testing.
Absolutely. I'm like trying not to get emotional, but you guys are just so spot on. And I'm sure everyone in East Palestine and surrounding areas just appreciate this so much. Can you, well, it looks like, Andrew, you did post the link, or let me see. What I am going to ask is that anyone watching tonight or watching the recording, please do not give me any tips or patrons tonight. Please give it directly to this organization, and also share to your friends. So the more you promote, the more other people promote. And even if everyone gives $3, that's a big freaking deal. So
thank you. Yeah, even sharing is huge too. We really appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Is there anything you want to leave our guests with?
Just real quickly, I mean, I just don't want this to be swept under the rug like they are very, very badly trying to do. So I want people, if you are involved or watching this or paying attention to anything, to keep talking about it, keep sharing about it until we can find some kind of justice, because this could literally happen anywhere. And maybe if it was in a bigger city, the treatment would be a little different, but I don't know. Regardless, it doesn't matter. These are still human beings. These people have lived here for generations. This is their home. You know, it really does. It breaks my heart. I know I keep saying that, but I do get emotional at least a few times a day reading through our group stuff and everything else. It's hard to fathom that they're being treated like this. Absolutely. And so, yeah, just awareness, sharing, even if, you know, you can't donate. I always believe sharing and posting social media is huge too, always.
Yeah, follow our Twitter and our Instagram. The bigger, more followers we have, at the very least, the more seriously we're taken as an organization. And if you can, please do contribute. If you have $1 to contribute to the thing, contribute $1 and then send it to your friends and your family and be like, I put in $1, put in $1.
That's so appreciated, of course.
I wish we could go to a big corporation and be like, hey, give us the money to do this, but no corporation is going to sell out money to hold another corporation accountable.
Hey, Norfolk Southern, are you watching?
Right. Donate money here, please.
So this is only going to come from individual donations, doing the work that needs to be done. And I know that times are I know times are the time we're in the times that we're in. So I know it that, you know, but if you can put $5 in, please give us $5. You know, there's no amount of money is too small, and just give it to your friends, give it to your family, and be like, hey, donate, put $5 in, put 10 in, whatever, because this is so much bigger than just East Palestine. This is all of us. This is everyone. This is every place that has a railroad running through it. This is the entire Northeast has been gassed. Poison gas has been just thrown over the entire Northeast. If this were Syria, we would be invading them because they committed a war crime. These are toxic gases. This is a war crime. This is on the books as a war crime.
Criminal,
with these types of chemicals. And they did that. It wasn't negligent, because negligent would be they weren't at fault. They just weren't paying attention. That's not what this is.
Yeah.
This was something that took their active participation to accomplish. They their actions were directly the cause of a plume of toxic gas with over 1 million pounds of artificial toxic chemicals, some of the most toxic chemicals known to modern science, were sent out in a gigantic plume over the entire Northeast, spreading out, causing acid rain and chemical sheen from Ontario, Canada, to Maine, Connecticut, upstate New York. The same sort of chemical silt that covered people's cars, that covered Emily's car around East Palestine, went down in Kentucky. We have no idea how far this has spread or what the long-term impacts of these are. Some of these toxic chemicals are so carcinogenic, it boggles the mind. Dioxin, just for example, is measured in parts per trillion for a lifetime exposure limit, because any dioxin that a human being is exposed to will stay and concentrate in their system, and they will pass it down to their children. It turns women infertile. It causes massive birth defects. It can wipe out an entire generation when they're exposed to it. And the dirt just around East Palestine has 100 times the concentration limit for a lifetime exposure in the soil, and they are doing nothing about it. We have no idea how far this spread, and that's not taking into account all the other toxic chemicals whose long and short-term toxicity we still don't know. But we do know there are so many anecdotal accounts. We have massive amount of empirical evidence that people all over from New York to Connecticut experiencing the same flu-like symptoms, the same nausea, dizziness, the same liver failure in dogs and cats that are being exposed, that are being experienced in and around the East Palestine train wreck, are all throughout the Northeast. And no study is being done, no science is being done, no testing is being done, no research is being done. And they don't plan on, they want all this to go away. They want most of the chemicals to break down, go into the soil, go into the rivers, go into the lakes, so it's impossible to prove. And once it's impossible to prove, it will be impossible to treat. We need to hold these people accountable, not just Norfolk Southern, not just the government, but the entire structure of our society that's trying to silence this and make this go away. We have to stand up to that. And the only way we can do that fast enough to get the tests done that we need done to actually see what the scope of the problem is to get the testing done, which is why it's so important that we get the funding for this as soon as possible.
Yes, absolutely. It's criminal is what it is. Poisoning humans,
violence.
our wildlife, our environment, our pets, everything.
Absolutely. I cannot thank you both enough. I absolutely would love to have you back at another time.
Thank you so much.
You guys are amazing, and I know all of my viewers also appreciate everything you're doing. I will send you that information tonight. And again, thank you so much. Everyone watching either now or the recording, please, please, please donate if you can. If not, please share. Give them a follow on Facebook and Twitter. It's so important, you guys. We are the people who can keep this going. We can't count on MSM. I'm preaching to the choir, but we need to help them. So thank you again so much. You guys stick around. We're going to cover some news stories. But thank you again so much, you guys. You are
Thank you so much. Really appreciate you having us. Thank you.
Absolutely. Take care.
Thanks. You guys.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you. We're just gonna. Do we leave? Or do we just?
I forgot to be like, oh, here's how you exit. I'm a mess.
Yeah. No worries.
I was trying not to cry. You always know when I'm gonna cry, and I saw your face. I didn't see your face, but I think I saw what I thought your face would be. But I held it back. But it's just, I don't know, as an activist and an organizer, it's hard for me to listen to other activists and organizers without my heart just I understand. You know, it's hard, and you know, we owe a huge thank you to Whoopty Jenna, who has been just like on everything, just sending us articles and everything like 24/7 since day one.
She was the first one that I actually heard that was going on. Like she was talking about it way before anyone else was happening. It was like,
yeah,
this derailment happened near me. I was like, really? Okay.
Yeah. So thank you, Jenna. Love you so much. So tonight we do have to get to a few things. My comrade Steven Donziger got fucked again. Speaking of environmental shit, dude, this is fucking bad. Like, this is bad. He's been fucked for 3 years, and now they're doing it to him again. Do you have the article?
Yep, I am.
And if you are not familiar with Steven, he's been on my show several times. He tried to help indigenous peoples by taking Chevron to court because they poisoned their drinking water. And he got Chevron. Basically, he won. And Chevron is still not giving a penny. There was so much corruption. They they gave Donziger an ankle bracelet and all this shit, like he was a criminal, and it was just decided that what they did was supposedly legal by Gorsuch. So yeah, this is such a fucking travesty. This is bullshit. Andrew, do you want to read Steven's post?
Sure. So breaking, in a huge blow to the rule of law, the U.S. Supreme Court today let stand Chevron's prosecution and 3-year detention of me after helping indigenous people win the historic Amazon pollution case. Gorsuch dissented. Our Constitution does not tolerate what happened here.
I mean, it's bad enough they had the highest bail price in history of the United States for someone who was non-violent, for someone who literally just had the audacity to take a fucking disgusting piece of shit corporation. And, I love you, Steven. If you're watching, I fucking love you, and you're a badass, and you're a fucking hero. And we're going to keep fighting. But yeah, I can't say I'm totally shocked, but it's fucking bullshit.
Yeah, no. I mean, it just seems like it's sort of a wave of things, right? Like, and so we'll see what happens. But
and like, you guys are worth bajillions of dollars, and you still haven't paid these people.
Right.
Because they would rather keep dragging it out in court than admit that they fucking did something so egregious to these people, these Black and brown indigenous people in a culture that have literally nothing. They live in literal huts, and they were being poisoned. And he had the audacity to stand up to them, and now he's being penalized for it again.
Yep,
it's so fucked up.
Yeah.
So we're with you, Steven. We love you. We're gonna keep fighting with you. This is fucking bullshit.
And so, speaking on to the next catastrophe that has to do with climate change. Here we have in Philadelphia, we have a chemical spill that spilled into their Philadelphia's drinking water. So just a little bit about this. This is from yesterday. The city of Philadelphia says it is now confident tap water from the Baxter drinking water treatment plant will remain safe. Just like, of course, East Palestine is now safe, right? So who knows what it really is, until at least 11:59 p.m. Monday, following a chemical spill in the Delaware River. At a news conference late Sunday afternoon, city officials said they had not found any contamination in Philadelphia's water supply, and there would be no disruptions to school or city services on Monday. There has not been any contamination in the Philadelphia water system, Mike Carroll, the city's deputy managing director for transportation, infrastructure, and sustainability, told reporters. We have enough water to sustain a safe use for drinking, cooking, all purposes through at least 11:59 p.m. The potential for contamination is diminishing over time. The Philadelphia Police Department and Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection had also conducted a flyover across the Delaware River and saw no visual evidence of contamination plumes. So, I mean, there was videos I was seeing. People were lining up right when they found out that the spill happened in the Delaware River. We're getting water bottles, and so hopefully things are fine. Although it is kind of nerve-wracking because. Yeah, just knowing in terms of what happened with East Palestine and what continues to happening, I don't know. It's
just
not,
like every time my city trends, I'm like,
oh,
it's never anything good. Like, if I see Philadelphia or Harrisburg, I'm like, great, here we go. Now what?
Jenna says, well, if they didn't see it from a helicopter, it's fine. Yeah. Looks like the water's okay. It's moving.
Granted, it smells and it's brown, but I
can't smell it from the helicopter though, so hey, it's fine.
Oh my God. Maybe Obama will come in and fake sip it.
Maybe.
That was inspiring.
Well, they also, DeWine sipped some of the water and some other officials.
Oh yeah,
the water too. So
then he had diarrhea for 6 weeks, but nobody's talking about it.
That's why he's been missing in action.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's why. Oh yeah, I uncovered the secret.
Because he's been on the toilet the whole time. Got it. Okay. If only that were the case. So let's see here. What is next? Oh, and so more climate, more oil drilling, right? Or not more. We haven't really been talking about oil drilling, but more oil-based stuff. You may have seen recently that one of Biden's climate officials, right? White House climate advisor Ali Zaid was making a keynote address, and Climate Defiance, this organization, disrupted it. And
they'll be joining me. Several of those protesters will be coming on TBA in the next week or so.
Heck yeah. And I think, from my understanding, this is in response to a lot of climate change legislation that Biden has walked back on. But I think specifically what seemed to have triggered this was the Willow Project in Alaska, where they got approved for additional oil drilling, at which Biden basically said there would be no more oil drilling, correct, in his campaign promises. So these are people love to see
after he said nothing will fundamentally change. Yes, of course.
And
after he stuck his finger,
that was behind the scenes with his donors. That was behind the scenes
faces and said, "You're a goddamn lying pony face soldier," whatever the fuck it was. He is an environmentalist. Look, yeah, he fell asleep during the climate summit. Who cares? Like, big deal.
Right. It's fine.
So kick ass for these people disrupting. That's what I'm fucking talking about.
But you know what? I'm starting to wonder if like there's some Russia influence here, and maybe they're just over exaggerating. I don't know. That's what they literally are saying about like
the Earth is flat, so I don't understand the problem.
Yeah. So just some of these might be some Russian plants. Just a little. Keep it. No. All right. So here we go. We'll play it. Right in. Shut down White House climate advisor Ali Zaidi's keynote address.
No new drilling. Keep your promise. No new drilling. Keep your promise. No new drilling. Keep your promise. No new drilling.
He tried to respond.
Really grateful for your voice, for your message, for you being here.
The IPCC doesn't say to drill a little bit; it says extraction has to stop. The
But his
IPCC
answer did not address the broken promise.
Very, very clear.
Yeah.
Drilling has to stop, and all the green lighting of drilling on federal lands is more than Trump.
Yeah.
President Biden lied to us. He lied to our faces. He said he would end extraction on federal
demanded the
lands.
president
He has
keep
not
his
done
promise
that.
and
He has
end
extended.
extraction on federal
No
land.
promise. We want him to keep his promise. No new drilling.
Yep.
Absolutely. And like I said, I'll be having a few of those activists on TBA next week or two. It felt so damn good 2 weeks ago when I did something comparable with my comrades in PA. It feels so fucking good. Organizing feels great. Don't get me wrong. Like marching, having speakers, all of those things. It feels so good. But there's some kind of rush when you're just like, oh, hi, surprise. Yeah, I'm here. It's just like a rush. Like, you don't expect us, so we're going to catch you off guard and we're going to call you on your shit. And it feels really fucking good. And it's really powerful. So yes, more of this, please.
Yes. One thing I recently learned about, and part of the reason I recently learned about it is because, of course, no one's actually talking about. A lot of people have been talking about some of the protests, the working protests that have been going on in France, protesting the Macron raising the retirement age from, I believe, 62 to 64.
Yes.
Yeah, which is admirable. It keeps going, and man, they really do put the U.S. to shame.
Well, dude, like you have all those people because it's being raised 2 years. Dude, our minimum wage has been $7.25 for 13 years, and people still sitting on their asses.
Right. Yeah.
Holy fuck. Organizing is like pulling teeth.
Right.
It's crazy. It was like, come on, guys, get out here, and you do all this shit, and it's just like, nah, I'm gonna be on Twitter. Fuck that shit.
Yeah. And so, I in addition to that, on the 20th, there was actually a pretty sizable protest in South Africa.
I would say that's sizable.
Yeah. And so I wanted to show this breakdown here. Give me a second. Let me get the screen bigger and add it to on here. So this just kind of gives an outline. And then after the video, I'm just going to give a little bit more information. I'm definitely, when it comes to South Africa politics, I am definitely not an expert, but there were a couple of interesting things that I learned from just doing a little research that I think is just worth talking about.
In 2 African nations, there are allies on the streets demanding a new government. In Kenya, police fired tear gas and water cannons in an effort to disperse protests against President William Ruto. Demonstrators are upset about the high cost of living and alleged cheating in last year's elections. While in South Africa, thousands took to the streets demanding the resignation of President Cyril Ramaphosa. They say Mr. Ramaphosa is corrupt and has done little to deal with the country's crippling energy. Following both of these, you've got 2 protests, major protests, I should say, having both Eastern Africa, Southern Africa on the exact same day. Just explain to us how the demands of the protesters in both of these countries, South Africa and Kenya, how do they overlap?
Zain, the fact that we saw two opposition parties in Kenya and South Africa call for protest against the government of the day and the president of the day in both countries is significant, because these are two of Africa's most vibrant democracies, and these are also two of Africa's most vibrant opposition parties. In South Africa, it began with the Economic Freedom Fighters, EFF, the radical opposition party there, declaring a national shutdown and demanding that President Cyril Ramaphosa step aside, even calling him a dictator, because they feel like he's failed to stem the high cost of living, but especially the major economic crisis they're having is one of energy. The state utility power company there, Eskom, has plunged the country into this major power crisis where they're dealing with what is called load shedding. That is rolling blackouts, sometimes up to 10 hours a day. And that is the trigger for all these other issues that EFF has been advancing, and that they feel it was time to call this national shutdown. It wasn't quite a shutdown, but it still got enough people out on the streets across South Africa that it made a statement that President Cyril Ramaphosa has been put on notice. This is what Julius Malema, the leader of EFF, said.
We are here to demand the end of load shedding, to demand Ramaphosa to step down, and if he doesn't want to step down, we will force him to step down.
President Ramaphosa is facing some bit of unpopularity, especially after this round of load shedding, that it's projected he may lose the parliamentary majority of the ANC for the first time. And who might be a potential coalition partner? The same EFF. In Kenya, Raila Odinga, who reigned and lost 5 times the presidency, called for a national protest against the president and the government of William Ruto, and he believes that it's an illegitimate government, that he won the election, but also the high cost of living has affected a lot of Kenyans there, so much so that even some people that voted for President Ruto were on the streets to make their voices heard about these conditions. It ended up being, in some cases, the police running battles with protesters, using water cannons, using tear gas to push them back. Some opposition party officials were briefly arrested before being released, but also another kind of difficult start for President Ruto's presidency just a few months in that will be a difficult headache for him throughout his term, Zain.
All right, Larry Doe, live for us there. Thank you so much.
Wow.
Yeah. So one of the things, and again, there's a lot to this. So obviously, we know that apartheid was ended in South Africa. But I think one of the things that is worth considering is the fact that a lot of the land ownership and wealth, kind of similarly to what had happened in this country, was not redistributed, right? And so the African National Congress, which is the dominant party in South Africa, is very capitalistic, and that is where a lot of the wealth is concentrated. And so the EFF, which stands for Economic Freedom Fighters, this is one of the minority parties that was working towards the protests. They were formed in 2013, and their platform is essentially to nationalize everything, right? And I think one of the things that gained some traction, particularly on this day, is that, as what was mentioned, there is a lack of jobs and electricity that involves at times 10 hours worth of power outages. Another interesting stat that I actually found from Reuters that was not mentioned in this is that a third of South Africans are out of work right now, right? So I would say that would bring out some turnout when there's a high unemployment of that nature. So solidarity with them. And I don't know, Joy, if there's anything else you want to talk about.
I stand in solidarity with South Africa, Kenyans, but I can't, as an American, I can't help but be disappointed that our country is just such an embarrassment when it comes to shit like this. Like, you know, you brought up a good point that 1 out of 3 people is unemployed. And that does cause, you know, outrage and depression and all of these things. But we had that in COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And where'd that energy go? Like, you know, we had a huge Black Lives Matter movement for months.
Yes.
And then it just stopped. And,
Yeah.
you know, it's like, even if we do something, it ends without any, you know, without any tangibles being gained. And it's depressing because the people that we covered in you know, in other countries who protest, they know their worth. We don't know our worth. We think, even subconsciously, that we are expendable, that we don't deserve what we actually do. We don't realize we are part of humanity and we deserve to thrive, not just exist, but actually thrive and live good, healthy, meaningful lives. But we're so beaten down that we think this is how it is. It is how it is. That we just accept shit. And these people know their worth and they take a stand. I wish, I don't, and I say this every fucking day, but I don't know that our country will ever even be a fraction to that point.
Yeah. No, agreed. I mean, I think, and I wish I even remember the stat somewhere where I saw this, but I believe when it comes to a general strike, 400,000 is the largest number that people in the U.S., like largest number we've had in the U.S. And I believe that was maybe in the 30s, right? It was a long time ago. Feel free to fact check me on some of those figures. However, when it comes to like what's happening, say, in like, you know, France now, off your point, it is well beyond our largest numbers of 400,000. That was in a whole other decade where the left was a lot stronger, where there was a lot less powerful resistance from the government, right? They were not quite as tactful in how to divert it away. There's no, you know, there's nowhere close that we've come to that number now, right? So it is discouraging. Yeah. And I don't really, you know, we can just hope that more and more people become more active and involved.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, in that, speaking of which, shall we show your speech that you gave in Harrisburg?
Yeah, so I could not make it to the Peace in Ukraine protest in DC a week ago. So I decided, fuck it. I'm just going to go to my state capital and do something myself. It was so incredibly last minute. And it was like rainy and windy and freezing. And I bought candles because ideally I was like, we'll have a candlelight vigil. And it was way too windy and rainy to have one. But I was like, I'm on the Capitol steps. I'm going to give a speech and hopefully to at least show my solidarity.
So thank you so much for joining us. And for those watching at home, in case you don't know, I am visually impaired, so this isn't going to be flawless. But we are here tonight to demand peace talks between Russia and Ukraine, who are literally on the brink of World War III. Our country is sending weapons and billions of dollars to Ukraine when instead they should be demanding peace talks. War perpetuates more war, and we must take a stance of peace. The U.S. has more military bases across the world than all countries combined. We have the highest defense budget in our nation's history, but we're not defending anything. It is a war budget, plain and simple. Today marks the 20th anniversary of our invasion of Iraq. So this tonight is for not only the people of Ukraine, it is also about the countless Black and brown countries who have suffered or will suffer or are continuing to suffer from our imperialism and who are so often ignored. We stand with Haiti, Gaza, Libya, Palestine, Afghanistan, and the list goes on. When we speak about peace, we must also include political prisoners such as Leonard Peltier, and Julian Assange, whose only crimes were bringing attention to the wars the U.S. has created and the inhumanity being caused. Tonight, we stand with refugees, immigrants, victims of PTSD, disabled and unhoused veterans, families and friends of the 22 veterans who commit suicide every single day, the millions of Ukrainians who are saying no to war, and also the millions of Russians who are demanding a no to war. We stand here today in solidarity with the Answer Coalition. There are over 200 over 200 organizations who have joined and endorsed in solidarity, and all of the other sister actions, just like this one, that have happened today all across the country. We join to demand peace talks now. Thank you.
Heck yeah.
Hi. Yeah, that was all right.
That was good. That was good. Sounds like it was a very windy day.
Oh my God, dude. I tried to light a candle and it was just like, why?
Yeah, I remember you were saying that the candle would not go. I was like, now I can see why.
I was like,
I can hear the wind through here.
Like, my husband was filming and I'm like, can you hear me? Like,
right.
Oh my God. But I was like, I wanted to do at least something because holy shit, did I want to be there. What an amazing, just, oh my God. So many beautiful people, so many incredible organizations. So, and, that's why I wanted to, basically, I wanted to include everything in my speech that I feel that, Rage Against the War Machine neglected to mention. So I wanted to, to say my piece, and no pun intended, and also talk about, things they didn't mention or care to put on their demands list. So yeah, like fuck imperialism. Regardless, of who the, country is. Fuck imperialism. This isn't like we stand with them and not with them. No, fuck imperialism. Fuck war.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
There are no asterisks.
And I think, it really just shows too how, like you said, unfortunately you were unable to make the one in DC. But it just shows that, yeah, you can do your own thing. And even if it's just you there, you can get your voice heard because of social media and making sure, okay, well, here, I'm going to put this out there, and then somebody can listen and get a different perspective than what they're typically getting when it comes to MSM, which is just, we gotta keep defeating Russia. We got to keep defeating, and it's like, in the meantime, who's winning? It's definitely not the people that are living in either of those countries. So, yeah,
absolutely,
no, for sure. So that's awesome, and solidarity.
Do we have anything else tonight, or was that our last story?
That was the last story. Yeah.
Nice. Well, what do you have coming up, Saya?
Not too much. What about you?
Well, I just got back from a week in Florida, and you can tell I am like the most burnt I've ever been. I'm in so much fucking pain.
More burnt than you got during the March for Medicare for All in the summer?
That?
More burnt than you got in the summer? Yes! I don't know. You got pretty burnt from the March for Medicare for All.
Yes. I wore 100 plus proof sunscreen. As I always, 100 plus, dude. I had to order it special. It's like as high as it goes.
Yo.
And I'm telling you, I'm out there for 10 minutes and I'm like a fucking lobster. It's crazy. Like you can see like where my bathing suit is. It's like like you can see it's like literally like pasty ass white and then like bright red.
Wow.
Happens every time. But we had fun. We had some good times, and it was nice to get away courtesy my in-laws. So thank you to my in-laws. But yeah, I was also excited to get back because we didn't do our show last week, and I was like, there's so much happening we have to talk about.
Good amount.
So did you go through withdrawal?
Oh yes.
You were like, I need my dose of joy. What the fuck? Well, I definitely missed you, and I missed our beautiful viewers.
Yes,
I do have some other shows coming up. I will be posting about them on Twitter. Please subscribe to my solo channel, Savage Joy Marie Mann, on YouTube and Rockfin. If you are subscribed already, please make sure you still are, because I'll just say YouTube hates me. And also, if you have a few extra bucks and can throw in $3 a month for my Patreon in the future, that'd be great as well. But also, please donate to the organization from our guest tonight. They're doing incredible work, and it's an understatement, but it's quite unfortunate that people, we the people have to take a stand and say, this testing needs to be done because the government,
and not be sponsored by Norfolk. Like common sense. Like, yeah.
Oh my God. So yes, please keep talking about East Palestine. As long as they're suffering, it needs to be talked about. And we're going to be seeing effects of this for years and years and years. So keep this in the spotlight. Don't get distracted by garbage on social media. Stick to the issues. Talk about what's important.
Yeah.
So thank you guys for watching again, as always, and smash the like button and share. Thanks so much. Much love, guys. And I'll probably be doing another show at some point this week. But also we will be back next Monday.
We will be here. Same bat channel.
Much love.
All right.